Kentucky embraces silent ridges, ancient woodlands, and winding basins, which conceal chronicles far predating the Commonwealth's birth. Throughout this terrain, one discovers peculiar engravings, neglected mounds, and prehistoric landmarks that defy current understanding of those ancestral inhabitants. Such enigmas provoke inquiries regarding vanished civilizations, cryptic emblems, and historical episodes that remain shrouded in profound, unresolved mystery.
The Livingston County rock art shelters reside in a sequestered corner of western Kentucky, nestled within sandstone overhangs that most travelers would bypass without a solitary glance. They do not clamor for attention. They do not loom like monumental mounds or fortified stone ramparts. They remain clandestine, and perhaps that secrecy is the catalyst for their profound strangeness. These sanctuaries preserve engravings and glyphs that feel more primordial than the surrounding terrain, predating nearby settlements and even the familiar folklore we recount regarding early Kentucky. When you venture beneath those low, shadowed ceilings and allow your vision to acclimate, the incisions upon the stone emerge, and you suddenly realize you were standing before communiques etched by souls who occupied this earth hundreds, perhaps thousands of years ago. The initial observation regarding these shelters is their organic appearance. They were not engineered by human hands. Rather, the rock was sculpted by the slow passage of time, water, and wind, leaving shallow alcoves and elongated overhangs perfect for seeking refuge from the elements. One can envision ancient families congregating here, finding warmth by a crackling hearth.
You can visualize nomadic travelers pausing to rest for a night before continuing their odyssey. Yet, at some juncture during those vast stretches of millennia, an individual wielded a stone tool and inscribed symbols into the pliable rock. That specific moment transformed these natural recesses into something far more enigmatic. Some carvings are elementary, linear strokes, cruciform marks, or shapes that might represent tallies or quantitative records. Others are remarkably intricate, anthropomorphic figures with limbs outstretched, zoomorphic forms, celestial circles with radiating lines, spirals, and idiosyncratic symbols that defy conventional expectations. This eclectic assembly is precisely what bewilders observers. You find designs reminiscent of traditional indigenous iconography from this region, yet adjacent to them are anomalous markings that do not harmonize with any established stylistic category. Each time a researcher attempts a definitive classification, a subtle detail shatters the paradigm. One shelter features a panel where carvings sprawl across the rear wall like an expansive chronological narrative.
Certain figures appear relatively recent, with crisper edges and less erosion, while others are so significantly weathered they nearly vanish unless illuminated by the perfect angle of light. This stratification suggests the shelter served as a sanctuary across multiple generations, or perhaps diverse cultural lineages. It is easy to imagine a wayfarer carving a mark to anchor a memory, only for another to return years later and contribute a new chapter to the chronicle. Over time, the wall evolved into a communal ledger for people who remained strangers to one another. Many who visit the site remarked upon its unique atmosphere. Upon entering the shelter, the temperature descends slightly, and the air feels motionless, as if anchored by the weight of the stone. Voices do not reverberate, they are absorbed by the porous sandstone. That pervasive silence renders the carvings even more vivid. You find yourself gravitating closer, striving to discern every nuance. The longer you gaze, the more the symbols coalesce into narratives your mind instinctively attempts to forge. It is only human to wonder what the artisan intended to convey.
Were they demarcating territory, chronicling spiritual visions, venerating deities, or providing warnings? Or were they simply creating because it was an integral facet of their existence, something mundane to them, but cryptic to us? One particularly arresting carving depicts a figure elevating an object above its head. The anatomy is basic: torso, legs, and arms, but the overhead artifact causes pause. Some interpret it as a weapon, others as a gathering basket. A few speculate it represents a solar emblem or a ceremonial relic. Absent its original context, every hypothesis carries weight. If you observe it long enough, the silhouette seems to shift according to the narrative you envision that day. Another panel features a spiral incised deeply into the stone. Spirals are a recurring motif in global antiquity, symbolizing journeys, seasonal cycles, the sun, or the essence of life itself. Here, the spiral exists in isolation, disconnected from other figures, as if carved with singular focus and then left undisturbed. It remains smooth and rhythmic, possessing a nearly hypnotic quality.
When you pass your hand near it, not making contact, but close enough to perceive the cool stone, you contemplate the individual who labored over it. How much time was invested? Why was this specific location chosen? Did the spiral represent a sacred truth or a deeply personal sentiment? What intensifies the mystery is the isolation of these shelters. There are no major urban centers nearby, no grand mound complexes, nor extensive archaeological debris scattered throughout the surrounding woods. This is not the type of location where one expects to find institutionalized ritual sites or significant commercial hubs. That isolation makes the carvings feel more intentional. Someone ventured here for a reason compelling enough to leave a permanent mark. Perhaps the profound quietude was the attraction. Perhaps the shelter itself was perceived as hallowed or significant in a manner we cannot bridge with modern perception. Over the years, numerous researchers have meticulously documented this rock art, yet the friable sandstone makes preservation an arduous challenge.
Precipitation, frost, and encroaching moss are slowly eroding the edges of history. Some panels already appear more ephemeral than they did just a few decades ago. This gradual erasure creates a poignant sense of urgency. It is akin to witnessing history evaporate in real time. Visitors depart with a mixture of reverence and melancholy, aware that one day these symbols might dissolve entirely, leaving only sketches and photographs as echoes. Standing within the shelters today, the veil of the present feels remarkably thin. You can imagine ancestral figures crossing the same threshold, carrying tools or baskets, perhaps with children trailing behind. You visualize them working by firelight, sparks dancing against the rock. Perhaps they conversed softly while they worked, sharing oral histories about the land, the spirits, or the stars. Whatever they chose to engrave, they clearly believed it possessed significance. People do not labor over stone without purpose. What resonates most regarding the Livingston County shelters is that these marks were not created for public spectacle. They were not grandiose monuments. They feel intimate, almost sequestered.
It is like discovering a personal journal tucked away on a forgotten shelf. You can examine the pages, but you cannot hear the writer's cadence. You do not know the texture of their daily lives. You only see the impressions they chose to leave behind. Today, the site remains in a tranquil, rural setting. Trees cluster around the sandstone formations, and the earth is cushioned by a carpet of leaves and moss. When you step inside, you hear the wind rustling outside, yet the interior remains perfectly still. That persistent silence compels you to decelerate and observe with greater intensity. The more you contemplate those carvings, the more you feel the past standing just inches behind you, observing. There is no elaborate visitor infrastructure here, no neon signage or bustling crowds. It is solely you, the stone, and the inscriptions. Curiously, that stark simplicity is its greatest asset. You can experience the site in a raw, authentic state, without modern distractions. The mystery becomes a personal dialogue.
The elusive Redbird petroglyph panels remain one of Kentucky's most captivating enigmas.
ensnaring your curiosity long before you actually witness them. The name alone evokes vivid visions of crimson-hued symbols etched into stone walls hidden deep within the rugged hills. In truth, that image is not far from reality. These panels were renowned for a series of carvings described as avian forms, human figures, spirals, and motifs that defied classification within standard indigenous artistic catalogs. Most curiously, certain engravings exhibited sophisticated details that seemed remarkably incongruous for the era of their inception. That unsettling lack of alignment is precisely what keeps the discourse surrounding them alive. The panels were originally situated near the historic Redbird River, tucked away on a weathered cliffside. If you can imagine traversing dense Kentucky woodlands, crossing tranquil streams, and stumbling upon a massive stone slab adorned with intricate incisions, you capture the essence of the experience visitors once described. Some symbols were delicate and shallow, as if traced with reverence, while others were deep grooves carved with deliberate force.
Several figures stood apart because they appeared entirely distinct in style. That is where the mystery deepens. There were what observers termed alphabetic carvings, lines and shapes that some theorized resembled ancient writing systems from distant corners of the globe. You can understand how such bold theories flourished. Some speculated that the carvings originated from ancient voyagers or explorers who reached North America long before documented history. Others countered, arguing the designs were simply unconventional native symbols that had been misunderstood. Without comprehensive records or their original archaeological context, it remains difficult to discern which interpretation approaches the truth. What rendered these panels even more perplexing was the eclectic mix of styles. You observed figures mirroring traditional local petroglyph art, yet adjacent to them were markings that did not coincide with standard woodland or Mississippian designs. It suggested that either multiple cultures etched the same rock over vast intervals, or a singular brilliant mind created something profoundly intentional that we still struggle to comprehend.
When visitors explored the site decades ago, many spoke of the profound sensation of standing before the panel, attempting to decode its secrets. The expanse was wide, resembling a natural masonry wall. Observing human-like figures next to cryptic signs lent the location an aura of something half-forgotten. You could palpably feel its antiquity, even without possessing any knowledge of its true meaning. That is the nature of petroglyphs. Once their significance fades, the surrounding silence becomes an inherent part of the mystery. Unfortunately, the narrative suffered a tragic turn. The original panel did not endure in situ. The rock face fractured during a monumental geological collapse, and the carvings were nearly lost to time. For a period, it was unclear if the fragments had survived intact. There were persistent rumors about them being relocated, curated, forgotten, and then eventually rediscovered. This added another layer of intrigue, as if the mystery itself refused to remain dormant. A significant piece of history slipped from the landscape and nearly vanished entirely. Some remnants were eventually preserved, but the panel's original orientation is lost.
When you read accounts from those who viewed it prior to the collapse, you grasp that the stone held far more carvings than the remaining fragments demonstrate. That leaves us with descriptions, vintage photographs, and fading personal memories. Each account varies slightly, like people attempting to solve a puzzle that was already missing its foundational pieces. One of the most intensely debated elements is the carving identified as a bird. It possessed a singular shape, wings spread wide, with a torso that did not correspond to typical regional indigenous designs. That single figure ignited protracted debates. Was it symbolic? Was it ceremonial? Or was it merely a creative impulse etched by someone who never imagined it being scrutinized centuries later? Absent clear context, every hypothesis remains equally plausible. Another engraving depicted a sequence of symbols that some perceived as resembling ancient European or Mediterranean lettering,
People became enamored with the prospect of pre-Columbian contact, yet no definitive evidence exists. It might be pure coincidence, it might be gross misinterpretation, or it might be a forgotten reality we have yet to grasp.
That vast expanse between empirical facts and raw imagination is where the mystery thrives. When you contemplate the individuals who might have chiseled these figures, it invokes a sense of quiet wonder. They stood in these same forests, hearing the same winds whistle through the canopy, etching symbols into rock because those images possessed profound meaning to them. Perhaps they were marking a sacred nexus. Perhaps they were chronicling a history. Perhaps they were leaving missives for those dwelling in the nearby valleys. Regardless of their intent, they left behind a legacy that held enough gravity to warrant the strenuous effort of carving. Today, when individuals discuss the lost Redbird petroglyph panels, there is a pervasive sentiment of melancholy mingled with intense curiosity. The original rock face is gone from its sanctuary. However, the terrain still retains its memory. When you wander through the area now, the forest feels dense and hushed, and it is easy to envision how the carvings once stood luminous against the stone.
The woodland seems to act as a guardian of the narrative, keeping portions of it perpetually veiled. There are a few smaller stones in the region that contain carvings believed to be linked to the original panel. They reveal spirals, crosses, and enigmatic shapes that hint at the larger masterpiece that once graced that cliff. Yet, contemplating fragments is never equivalent to beholding the whole. It leaves gaps in your understanding, gaps that your mind instinctively yearns to reconcile. That is part of the catalyst for why theories continue to proliferate. My impression of the mystery is that it serves as a sobering reminder of how fragile ancient knowledge truly is. Something chiseled with profound intention and meaning can endure for hundreds of years, only to shatter and vanish in a solitary instant. When that occurs, we are left solely with stories, conjectures, and whatever remnants the earth chooses to relinquish. The lost Redbird petroglyph panels are not celebrated because the carvings were flawless. They are iconic because they were unconventional, beautiful, baffling, and subsequently stripped from their original home before we could fully appreciate them.
The enigma of Indian Fort Mountain, looming over Berea, remains a silent sentinel of Kentucky's ancient past. Ascending its trails, one immediately perceives the ridge's peculiar energy. The terrain constricts, ascends, and meanders in formations that appear deliberately sculpted. Nestled along these heights are weathered stone embankments that have ignited decades of inquiry. These walls represent the core of the puzzle, as consensus eludes experts regarding their architects, their primary function, or their intended configuration. Upon initial encounter, they lack the colossal scale one might anticipate from distant historic civilizations. They appear humble, fragmented, and weathered, remnants of a once coherent design. Yet, tracing their path reveals a deliberate intention. Certain sections hug narrow precipices, offering vantage points over the sprawling basins below. Others border sheer drops where a barrier seems unnecessary, unless the objective was strictly governing passage across the summit.
The stones themselves vary. Some are handheld, others immense, all dry-laid without mortar, proving the builders possessed an advanced grasp of structural balance on treacherous slopes. Scholars suggest these were the works of woodland period indigenous peoples, long before European contact. While this fits the general timeline of regional activity, the structures defy typical woodland fortification tropes. They lack the thickness for siege defense, the height to deter invaders, or the conventional layout of known military works. Instead, they resemble a network of thresholds or celestial markers. This ambiguity fuels the debate. Were they defensive, ritualistic, or perhaps something entirely different? Traversing the ridge, one notices how the landscape dictates movement. In natural bottlenecks, one finds stone clusters shaped like ancient checkpoints. It is easy to envision ancestors directing traffic here, perhaps for security, perhaps for communal gatherings, or to demarcate sacred ground.
Ultimately, their true purpose remains veiled. Intriguingly, several rock outcrops with flat surfaces align precisely with the solar cycles. Some observers claim these stone alignments track the sun during solstices or equinoxes. Though not scientifically solidified, the sensation is undeniable when the dawn's first light bathes the ridge. It suggests the builders synchronized their masonry with the heavens to mark seasonal shifts. Furthermore, mound-like undulations add layers of intrigue. Though not large enough for traditional burial mounds, they seem far from natural. Perhaps they are eroded earthworks or ancient platforms for community ceremonies. Standing atop these rises, the strategic choice of location becomes evident. The vista expands in every direction, and the wind hums with a resonant clarity, as if the mountain itself echoes. Modern hikers frequently report a profound sense of presence, not one of dread, but of lingering memory.
It feels as though the heights are conscious of your footsteps. This impression intensifies where stone walls reappear from the forest floor, half buried yet persistent. Some curve gracefully, others slice straight through narrow passes. Certain sections show signs of later modification, suggesting multiple generations interacted with these stones over centuries. The sheer extent of the walls indicates meticulous planning. They do not blanket the mountain, but navigate it with intimate knowledge of every contour. The builders did not impose their will. They collaborated with the geography. Imagining this surveying feat without modern instruments is humbling. Local lore offers varied perspectives. Some see them as hunting overlooks, others as a grand intertribal nexus or spiritual borders. While these accounts vary, they all acknowledge the mountain's significance long before Berea's founding. Even the acoustics are remarkable. The rock gaps create natural resonance chambers where voices carry across vast distances.
Was this acoustic property intentional? Did the architects master the mountain's soundscape? While we cannot be certain, these features feel too deliberate to be accidental. Today, the ridge is a sanctuary for Berea College students, families, and travelers seeking the horizon's peace. The walls endure, though time has softened their edges. Their power lies not in spectacle, but in their palpable intentionality. Every discovery prompts a new question. Were they light fortifications, ceremonial boundaries, or trade markers? Perhaps they served a practical need that has simply faded from the modern human imagination. There is a deeply human element to this mystery. Walking beside these stones, one cannot help but visualize the hands that placed them. These people had reasons, stories, and a profound connection to this earth. Whatever their goals, the mountain preserves fragments of that reality through centuries of erosion. In our time, the site remains serene, yet occupied by the steady pulse of hikers. The walls continue their slow return to the earth, hidden under moss and leaf litter. Touching the cool, jagged surface serves as a bridge to the past, a reminder of those who shaped this land. My own sense is that Indian Fort Mountain was a place where boundaries held deep symbolic weight. The layout feels like a terrestrial map, guiding people through zones of meaning we have since forgotten. Its power isn't rooted in myth, but in profound silence. The builders left no scripts, only stone, light, and wind. Even after extensive time on the ridge, the answers remain out of reach. Yet a deep connection to the terrain persists. Perhaps that is the mountain's ultimate gift. The stones were arranged to remind us that certain parts of our world are intended to be felt rather than merely explained.
The venerable earthworks of Wickliffe Mounds occupy a serene elevation overlooking the Mississippi River's expansive floodplains. Upon your initial arrival at the site, the sheer antiquity and cultural richness of this sacred ground do not immediately reveal themselves. One observes rolling contours and emerald fields, perhaps punctuated by structures shielding the excavated zones. Yet, as you venture further into the landscape, a palpable presence emerges from beneath the soil. These embankments were not haphazard accumulations of earth. They were meticulously sculpted by a civilization that flourished centuries before European explorers ever traversed Kentucky's wilderness. The architectural intent, the geographic orientation, and the monumental scale of these earthworks compose a riddle that persists to this day. Wickliffe was once a thriving ceremonial center established by the Mississippian culture, a people who mastered social hierarchy, ritual, and communal infrastructure with profound sophistication.
The mounds were strategically positioned. One served as a paramount platform where chieftains likely presided, while another was tethered to sacred rites or assemblies. Others functioned as elevated foundations for elite residences or communal halls. Each feature belongs to a master plan, resembling a nascent city, where everything ascends gracefully from the loam, rather than being forged solely from timber or stone. Standing at the heart of the site, one can almost visualize the ancestral bustle. Individuals traversing the plazas with woven baskets, the aroma of hearth fires, and the gathering for celestial events long forgotten. However, the allure of Wickliffe transcends the mere existence of these mounds. While similar earthworks dot the American South and Midwest, the specific enigma here lies in the community's evolution and the startling artifacts unearthed within. For decades, archaeologists have grappled with the rhythms of life here, the motivations behind the specific configuration, their cosmology, and the catalyst for their eventual exodus. Even today, the inquiries far outnumber the definitive conclusions.
When systematic excavations commenced in the early 20th century, it became apparent that Wickliffe sheltered far more than simple earthen heaps. Beneath the strata lay the footprints of grand structures, ceremonial regalia, distinctive ceramics, and interments that indicated a highly stratified society. Unfortunately, those nascent excavations inadvertently compromised portions of the archaeological record, leaving permanent voids in our understanding. These historical gaps are precisely what sustain the site's intrigue. Every absent detail compels us to hypothesize how these ancient architects navigated their world and perceived the divine. Observing the central mound, you might notice the terrain dipping slightly, forming a natural amphitheater or a central plaza. Some scholars suggest this served as a theater for grand festivals or diplomatic summits, while others view it as a spiritual meridian guiding the village's daily pulse. The reality likely encompasses both, as the Mississippian worldview rarely separated the secular from the sacred. In their eyes, the cosmos was a unified tapestry.
Furthermore, the alignment of the mounds with the heavens is striking. Research suggests certain earthworks were engineered to track the sun's trajectory. During solstices or equinoxes, light and shadow play across the site in deliberate patterns. Was this intentional? Did these builders harmonize their architecture with astronomy? Given their proficiency at sites like Cahokia, it is almost certain they did so here as well. The artifacts recovered from within the earthworks provoke further curiosity. Pottery adorned with unique iconography reveals stylistic shifts that do not always align with neighboring settlements. These designs imply sophisticated trade networks stretching across vast territories, linking Wickliffe to distant cultures. Other recovered items hint at elaborate rituals involving rhythmic movement, dance, or votive offerings to ancestral spirits. It is clear that Wickliffe was no isolated outpost. It was a vital node in a connected prehistoric world governed by complex laws and tenets long before Kentucky appeared on any colonial map.
Perhaps the most haunting question is why this vibrant center declined. There is no empirical evidence of catastrophic warfare or sudden invasion, no charred ruins or signs of trauma. Instead, the abandonment appears gradual. Some point to ecological shifts, such as river meanders or flooding,
making subsistence untenable. Others suspect socio-political transformations led the populace to seek new horizons. Then there is the whispered possibility. Perhaps the site was so spiritually significant that its abandonment was a ritual act, moving the sacred center to a fresh location. Regardless of the motive, the people departed without a written legacy, leaving the mounds as silent witnesses for future generations. Traversing the grounds today, the atmosphere is profoundly tranquil. The stillness of the air often prompts a hushed reverence in visitors. The mounds rise gently, like watchful guardians of the river valley. There is a restorative quality to the landscape's geometry, yet it carries a significant historical weight.
You are conscious of the lives lived here, the leaders, artisans, and families, whose voices have been replaced by the subtle clues they left in the clay. Inside the controlled excavation galleries, the earth is bisected like a chronological archive. Each layer preserves shards of pottery, hearth ash, and stone tools that once occupied the floors of ancient dwellings. Looking down into these trenches, it is impossible not to imagine the warmth of a busy home. You see the ghosts of children playing and artisans shaping clay, and then you ponder the silence that followed. You realize how time eventually reclaimed the village, leaving only echoes. What resonates most at Wickliffe is its inherent humanity. It lacks the cold intimidation of a stone pyramid, feeling instead like a place where daily life and grand purpose coexisted. It proves that even without metal tools or written scripts, ancient people could reshape the world with enduring intent. Today, the site is a place of education and reflection, with paths that navigate the earthen monuments. It is peaceful, yet bittersweet, knowing how much of the original meaning remains locked within the unexcavated earth.
The soil is soft beneath your feet, and the local wildlife moves through the canopy. The landscape feels open, yet that openness masks deep, hidden layers of human history. These layers hold chronicles we can only hope to interpret. My perspective on Wickliffe is that it represents a mystery that does not seek to overwhelm, but rather invites contemplation. You do not require elaborate legends to feel the gravity of this place. The power comes from the silence and the missing chapters of the story. The architects shaped this land with profound intention, but time has muted their words. We are left with the geometry of the earth and the objects they cherished.